Welcome to the deep dive. Today's guest, well, they've given us quite the puzzle. We're diving into the world of artist Bob Camblin.
Oh, a fascinating figure, to be sure.
Right, and we've got a ton of material to sift through. First, there are Camblin's own writings. They're wonderfully cryptic.
Yes, poetic and sometimes just enigmatic. Really give you a feel for the way his mind worked.
Then there's this detailed biography. Traces his whole life, his education, his teaching career. That time he just decided to become nomadic.
Yeah.
And how his art evolved through it all.
Not to mention the reviews of books showcasing his art. Those offer some really insightful perspectives. They highlight, for instance, his deep connections to Zen Buddhism and the I Ching.
And that sense of mystery. It seems to be everywhere in his work.
Pervasive, absolutely.
So, as always, our goal is to, extract the good stuff. Those key insights that'll give our listener who loves to learn quickly but thoroughly that satisfying aha moment.
Exactly. We want to make this complex figure, Bob Camblin, suddenly snap into focus. So let's start at the beginning, shall we? Bob Camblin was born in 1928 in Oklahoma.
Oklahoma, huh? Interesting. Seems like his formal art journey began at the Kansas City Art Institute. A pretty traditional starting point, you might think.
You would, wouldn't you? But even early on, there were hints of the unconventional path he'd eventually take. He won a Fulbright scholarship to Italy in the 1950s. Just imagine the artistic scene there at that time.
Must have been incredible.
Oh, it was. And the biography really emphasizes the impact of certain places. He spent time immersed in those classic masterpieces at the Uffizi Gallery, of course.
As one does in Italy.
Of course. But he was also profoundly moved by something rather different. The Capuchin catacombs of Palermo.
Wow. From Renaissance masterpieces to, mummies.
Later, he actually referred to these influences as mummies in his memory. It suggests a pretty, unusual encounter and maybe an early grappling with ideas of mortality and the fleeting nature of life, all themes that pop up again and again in his later work.
It's a fascinating contrast. Okay, so after Italy, he briefly worked as a map maker.
Briefly, yes.
Then he launched into a teaching career. He was at Ringling School of Art, University of Illinois, University of Detroit.
University of Utah.
Right, and finally Rice University. So he spent a significant chunk of time embedded in the academic art world.
Almost 2 decades, in fact. And that must have provided him with a structured environment.
Right.
A community of artists and thinkers. A platform to hone his own ideas.
And to interact with students, shape young minds.
Absolutely. But the biography also hints that even during this time, his unique artistic philosophy was, it was brewing beneath the surface. Maybe even in a kind of a tension with some of the more established approaches he was surrounded by.
Interesting. That leads us perfectly to the heart of it all. His artistic philosophy, as revealed in his own words. And these writings, let me tell you, they're not your typical artist statement.
Oh, not at all.
Be prepared for some seriously thought-provoking and at times delightfully puzzling insights. One of the big themes that jumps out is his fascination with paradox. He was always seeking what he called the bright gray.
Yes, that bright gray existing between the whiteness and the blackness. He was drawn to the nuances, the smear, the in-between.
He wasn't interested in those neat either scenarios. Not at all.
This rejection of rigid categories.
Right.
It's a crucial key to understanding his art. He was trying to capture the fluid, often contradictory nature of reality.
And he didn't just think his way to this philosophy. He put huge emphasis on intuition. He talks about being without a doubt senza dubio, as he put it. It's like a kind of deep inner knowing that goes beyond logic or reason.
Absolutely. He valued this almost visceral certainty, a trust in one's intuition that bypasses the need for rational explanations. And that strongly aligns with, say, the Zen Buddhist approach of valuing direct experience above all else.
Right. It's not just about understanding something intellectually. It's about a feeling, a deep knowing. And woven through all his writing, there's this profound connection to nature. He says, find something in nature that completes you and then surrender. That's quite a statement.
It is, and quite evocative. It suggests a certain humility. We're not separate from nature. We're part of it. And surrendering in this context, it's not about being passive. It's about letting go of the ego's need to control everything and accepting our place within a larger, more complex whole.
Letting go of that illusion of control that we humans cling to so tightly. He also repeatedly stresses the importance of process and awareness. He says, process and awareness of it cannot be failure. I mean, that really shifts your perspective, doesn't it?
It's incredibly freeing, actually, especially for artists. But anyone engaged in a creative endeavor can benefit from this outlook. It's not about the end result necessarily, it's about the journey and the awareness we cultivate along the way.
Even if what you create doesn't match your original vision, the act of creating, of being present in that process, is where the real value lies.
Precisely. And speaking of process, he had quite a bit to say about overthinking. Step off the train of thought, he urges us. That constant mental chatter, it can really get in the way.
It can. It clouds our perception.
It can block us from accessing that deeper intuition and from experiencing the world directly. So step off that train. Let go of the need to analyze everything.
It's like he's saying, just be. And his whole definition of art seems to have undergone a really interesting evolution. He started with that more traditional art for art's sake idea, but it shifted to something much deeper and more personal. Art for life's sake, or art for my sake, or art for survival's sake. Art wasn't just some separate aesthetic thing anymore. It was woven into the very fabric of his being. It was essential.
Absolutely. Art wasn't a luxury. It was a tool for understanding the world, for exploring his own internal landscape. Maybe even a way of coping with, well, the inherent challenges of being alive.
Right. It was essential to his very existence. And then there are these fascinating juxtapositions in his writings, these seemingly contradictory ideas that he holds in perfect balance, like resist and submit. I love that.
So powerful. It speaks to that constant tension that exists both in life and in art. There are times to assert yourself, to push back against boundaries. But then there are times when you need to yield, let things unfold naturally.
It's finding that sweet spot between these seemingly opposite forces.
It's a dance, really.
And then there's this line, when understood, all truth is funny. What do you make of that?
I think he's suggesting that when you reach a certain level of understanding, you see the inherent humor in it all, the absurdity even.
That cosmic joke. And he also differentiates between believing and knowing. There's this implication that true understanding transcends mere intellectual belief. It has a kind of mystical dimension.
Yes, it's about that deeper, more experiential level of knowing. It ties back to his emphasis on intuition and direct experience as paths to real understanding. Not just head knowledge, but a feeling, a knowing in your bones.
And then there's that wonderful line, everyone is a mirror, and that is magic. What a beautiful way to express the interconnectedness of all things.
And how we learn about ourselves through our interactions with others. We see ourselves reflected back in those around us.
And in that reflection, we find magic, the magic of seeing ourselves more clearly.
Precisely. He also delves into this idea of positive versus negative magic. He clarifies that magic for seeing is positive. It's about using this power, not for personal gain, but for true perception and understanding.
Not manipulating the world, but seeing it more clearly.
Exactly. That's the positive magic. Cultivating a deeper, more insightful way of perceiving reality. Moving beyond a superficial glance to really see what's there.
It's almost like he's using magic as a metaphor for heightened awareness.
I think you're right. And this leads him to explore the idea of real seeing. He argues that it's inherently deceptive and that art, in a way, is just partial retention. Like we can never fully grasp the totality of reality. Art only offers us these glimpses, fragments, fleeting memories.
So it's like we're always just catching glimpses.
Exactly. And isn't that reflected in his art itself? The way he uses those layered watercolors and drawings. Things are partially obscured. It suggests that we're only ever seeing fragments of a larger, more complete picture.
Right, like reality is this huge, complex tapestry, and we only get to see these little snippets.
Yeah.
And then there's this thought, nothing is intrinsically valuable. That really challenges our typical way of thinking, doesn't it?
Absolutely. He's pushing us to question where value really comes from. Is it inherent in things, or is it something we assign to them based on our beliefs, needs, and cultural contexts? A pretty radical idea.
It is. Makes you re-examine everything you think you know. And he saw the artist as a free agent, someone unbound by the commercial art market, by societal norms.
That's a key to understanding why he eventually walked away from that stable academic life and embraced this nomadic existence. He prioritized his artistic freedom above all else. He wasn't interested in pleasing institutions or playing by the rules of the conventional art world.
He was a rebel at heart.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't hold back his criticism of what he called consumer art. He felt it was all about seeking shock and recognition, with little regard for actual contemplation.
He saw a shift away from genuine engagement with art. It became more about fleeting sensations, quick hits of emotion, rather than thoughtful reflection.
That's a really interesting observation, especially in our current media landscape. It makes you think about how we consume art and information today. Are we really engaging with it deeply, or just seeking those quick hits of novelty and stimulation?
It's something to ponder, isn't it? And he recognized this tension between an artist's initial intention and how the art actually manifests. Sometimes the final product takes on a life of its own.
Right. The creative process isn't always linear or predictable. And this next quote really hits home for me. Knowledge does not and cannot educate. The feeling cannot be transferred except by experience. It highlights how important experience is to truly understanding something. It's not enough to just know things intellectually.
He's saying that genuine understanding, real learning, requires a kind of emotional engagement, direct, lived experience. You can't just read about something and truly get it. You have to feel it, live it.
You have to go through it. And isn't that true for so many things in life?
Absolutely. Another one of his really empowering ideas is no mistakes. He believed in simply doing the best you can. It's such a liberating philosophy, isn't it?
It really is. No pressure to be perfect, just a focus on effort and continual learning and growth. And in that framework, those so-called mistakes become opportunities.
They're valuable. They're part of the process. And I love his hologram analogy for collective understanding. The more perspectives we bring together, the clearer the picture becomes.
Right. It's like each of us holds a piece of the puzzle.
And only by putting those pieces together can we see the whole picture. Just like a hologram, where each fragment contains the whole image.
And finally, there's this idea of time. He talks about living in the past, present, and future simultaneously, all while trying to dream of how it works. It's a very fluid and cyclical view of time.
It's holistic, and it recognizes that past, present, and future are not separate but interconnected. And then there's this element of dreaming, of imagination, always striving to understand how it all works.
Trying to make sense of this grand, complex mystery that is time.
Exactly. And even something seemingly simple like the path of least resistance, he found it to be surprisingly complex for us humans.
Which is, let's face it, so true. We humans are not always rational creatures.
Not even close. So we have this incredibly rich tapestry of ideas drawn from Camblin's own writings. But how did these philosophies manifest themselves in his actual art?
Right. Let's talk about his artistic journey. Both the biography and the reviews point to some pretty significant shifts in his style and approach.
Absolutely. Early on, there's an engagement with social protest. There's a symbolic exploration of, well, the human condition.
He's grappling with some of those bigger social and political issues.
He is, but then he develops this really unique style called muchas volantes. It literally translates to flying flies.
Flying flies, huh?
It involves creating optical illusions through these intricate patterns of tiny dots and dashes.
Kind of like pointillism.
Similar, but with a much more dynamic, less structured feel. It plays with our perception, creating this shimmering, almost vibrating effect.
I can almost see it.
And the reviews connect this period to the influence of Dada and surrealism, those early 20th century movements that really challenged traditional art forms.
Makes sense. Abstraction. Disrupting conventional representation. So he's right in line with those movements.
Right in line. He also became known for this particular technique, blending drawing and watercolor. It creates these layered, almost translucent works.
Adding to that sense of depth and ambiguity we talked about earlier.
Yeah. Exactly. The way he layers those two mediums, it creates this visual dialogue between things being hidden and revealed. It echoes his philosophical idea about the partial retention of reality. And watercolor, with its inherent fluidity, that complements the more defined structure of his drawing. It's a beautiful pairing.
And then there are his recurring motifs, those images that pop up again and again. Scarecrows, often connected to the writing of Günter Grass, gloves, everyday machined objects, themes of metamorphosis, and then this almost mystical figure he called Saint Bambola. It's like a whole visual language he's creating.
He is. Each of those motifs probably held a deep personal significance for him, evolving meanings that shifted and deepened over time.
Like the scarecrows, the biography suggests they might represent ideas of transience, renewal, maybe even a subtle critique of society.
Yes, and those gloves, they could symbolize connection, or the lack of it, touch. The machined objects, maybe that reflects his thoughts on our relationship with technology. And the theme of metamorphosis, that speaks for itself, his fascination with change, transformation.
And Saint Bambola. Who was this mysterious figure?
That one's a little harder to pin down. Seems like it was a kind of muse for him, an embodiment of certain abstract ideas, although he later tried to distance himself from it.
Interesting. Like he outgrew it.
Maybe. And he also incorporated text into his drawings, which adds another layer to this whole thing.
Oh, yes. But here's the catch.
Yeah.
The biography points out that this text wasn't always straightforward. It could be information, yes, but it could also be a trap, a misleading clue.
Oh, he was a mischievous one, and that really underscores how important those ideas of puzzle and hidden meaning were to him. He wants the viewer to look beyond the obvious, to engage with the work on a deeper, more interpretive level. Don't just look, think.
Exactly. And this ambiguity, the sense that there are always hidden meanings waiting to be uncovered, it's everywhere in his work. This is not art for passive consumption.
No, this is art that demands your attention. It rewards you for looking closely, for coming back to it again and again. The meanings unfold over time. And there's this great anecdote. Apparently, he once said he wanted to remake Goya in 20th century terms. Quite a statement.
That's bold. Goya's work is so powerful, so intensely personal, and often very dark.
It is. But it also reveals a lot about Camblin's ambition. He wanted to grapple with those big, enduring human themes: darkness, absurdity, societal folly. But he wanted to do it through a modern lens, using the artistic language of his time.
And then there's this. He sometimes signed his works anonymous. That really emphasizes his unconventional approach, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It reflects his belief in submerging the ego, especially when collaborating. It's not about individual fame or recognition. It's about the work itself, the ideas it expresses.
And speaking of collaboration, he had those close partnerships in Houston with Earl Scaly and Joe Tate. B&E Productions, they call themselves.
Again later, the holding firm.
Right. And together they created these events that really challenged what art could be.
They were pushing boundaries, moving beyond static objects in a gallery. They created interactive, performative experiences, often ephemeral. It was about blurring the lines between artist and viewer, art and everyday life.
And Earl Staley, in the biography, he talks about learning from Camblin during these collaborations. Camblin's teaching style, it was all about storytelling. It was engaging, lively.
It was. And that idea of submerging the ego in service of collaboration, that comes up again. It seems central to his whole ethos. It's about the shared creative energy, the synergy that happens when individual ambitions take a backseat to a larger collective vision.
And then, in 1976, he makes this huge life change. He walks away from academia, from that stable life, and embraces a completely nomadic existence.
That was a pivotal moment.
It must have had a huge impact on his art.
Oh, absolutely. It was a complete immersion in art. He was traveling extensively, supporting himself through the sale of his work. Italy, France, Ireland, Mexico, the South Pacific, all these different landscapes, cultures, visual languages.
He was soaking it all in.
He was. And the biography mentions how incredibly productive he was during this time. He was channeling all those experiences into his art.
Then he eventually settles in Oregon, and later Louisiana, and becomes increasingly reclusive, even limiting contact with close friends.
It adds to the mystery, doesn't it?
It does. Like he was withdrawing from the world to go deeper into his own internal world, which probably fueled the unique and cryptic nature of his later work.
Probably. But even though he became reclusive, the critical perspectives are consistent. He was deeply respected by his peers. His works were highly sought after.
So even though he wasn't always in the public eye, there was a real appreciation for his talent and originality.
There was. And the scarcity of his work probably only increased its allure. The reviews really emphasized this mystical trickster figure persona and the philosophical depth of his art. There are all these connections to Zen, the I Ching, existentialism.
It all seems to weave together.
It does. His art operates on multiple levels. It's not just visual. It engages your intellect. It even touches on the spiritual. And that trickster element, it's like he's playfully subverting expectations, challenging us to think differently.
And one review describes his art as koans that disrupt linear thinking.
What a perfect analogy. His work is full of those intellectual puzzles, those paradoxes. It forces you out of your habitual way of thinking, opens you up to new possibilities.
And there's that recurring theme of finding enlightenment in the everyday, finding meaning in the seemingly absurd.
Exactly. Enlightenment isn't this distant mystical goal. It's here, now, in the ordinary moments, in the unexpected, if we just pay attention.
If we open our minds to it.
Yes. Ultimately, Camblin's legacy is about challenging perceptions, inspiring a deeper, more sustained way of seeing the world.
He's asking us to slow down, look closer, question everything.
Precisely. Okay, I think it would be helpful to, zoom in on a specific artwork to really illustrate some of these points.
That's good.
What about Electricage, his portrait of Benjamin Franklin? The reviews we have and that YouTube video transcript offer some pretty fascinating interpretations.
Yeah, Electricage definitely stands out. Okay, so we've got this portrait of Franklin, dressed in 18th century attire, set against this bright blue background. It's framed in an oval, with the word Electricage prominently displayed on a banner.
Right, and many of the interpretations focus on that idea of balance, the balance between intellect and practical application. Franklin was both a brilliant thinker and a doer.
Which aligns with those Zen ideas of interconnectedness, action and contemplation.
Exactly, and that serene blue background, that's often interpreted as representing tranquility, a depth of thought.
There are also some mystical elements,
Yep.
that inscription, your business in this space, and the running man press symbol.
Right, like he's hinting at something beyond the purely intellectual, a spiritual dimension. And if we look at it through the lens of the I Ching, it connects to hexagram 26, thought 2, the taming power of the great. It symbolizes this accumulation of knowledge and its disciplined application.
And Franklin embodies that perfectly, doesn't he?
He does, he's calm, but you sense this vast reservoir of knowledge and power beneath the surface. And that title, Electricage, it's obviously a play on electricity, but it also suggests this connection between scientific discovery and enlightenment. They both illuminate, in a way.
That's so clever. And stylistically, it blends traditional portraiture with more modern symbolic elements. He's bridging those two worlds, past and present.
He is, and that YouTube video, The Illuminated Sage, Big Ben, it goes even deeper. It draws connections between Franklin and Lao Tzu and talks about mindfulness and Buddhist inquiry.
Wow. So it's not just a historical portrait, it's a meditation on knowledge, creativity, self-awareness.
Exactly, and all of that is packed into a single image. And when you consider Camblin's broader philosophy, those interpretations, they just click into place.
Right. He wasn't just creating pretty pictures. He was posing profound questions about reality, perception, the human condition. He wanted us to think.
He did. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Bob Camblin's world, what are those key takeaways our listeners should hold on to?
Well, first and foremost, Bob Camblin was an artist who defied labels, both in his life choices and in his art. He was a free spirit, a questioner, a seeker.
He was. His journey from those early days in academia to his nomadic years, it's a testament to his independent spirit.
And his art is filled with paradox, hidden meaning, and a deep connection to all sorts of philosophical ideas. He's inviting us to look deeper, to go on our own journey of discovery.
And he reminds us that enlightenment isn't some final destination. It's an ongoing process.
It's about questioning, observing, finding meaning in the everyday, the unexpected. He spent his life creating these visual and intellectual puzzles for us.
He did.
So here's a final thought for you, our listener. Take one small detail in your daily routine, something you usually overlook, and look at it with fresh eyes. With that same curiosity that Camblin brought to his art, what hidden meanings might you discover? What unexpected connections might you make? Because maybe, just maybe, the most profound insights are hidden in plain sight. We just need to learn to see them.
That's a great note to end on.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.